Could we all mute ourselves?
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this Festival of Social Justice event. All of these events, at these events, Amnesty wishes to explore ways of winning hearts and minds to make a difference in the world. This week, the Withall Amnesty Group has invited 4 organisations to celebrate with us their work in offering a warm welcome and sanctuary to refugees and asylum seekers. This evening, we celebrate the work of volunteers at Bromsgrove and Redditch Welcome Refugees. That is Yvonne Rendell, just let us know who you are. Yvonne is the chair of the BRWR, and she'll be managing questions and comments, which you can ask your questions through the chat. Janet King, who is also with us. Janet, like to let us know who you are? Janet, there she is. And Maz, who unfortunately has not managed to get on with us yet. We also have from Malvern Welcome, Sue Wolfendale. And we have from Family Reunion, Linda Fleming. I'm actually from BRWR. You are?
Okay. Yeah, I'm on the committee with Janet and Yvonne. Yeah.
Thank you very much. They will be talking about their experiences of support to refugees through the UNHCR Syria Resettlement Scheme and about community sponsorship. The Amnesty members are Ian McGarr, I'm the chair of the Withall Amnesty Group, Pete Doubtfire, who is Amnesty's technical advisor to the festival, and we are using Rosemary Rivette's Rosemary's Zoom function. Amnesty International is a campaigning organisation that bases its activities on thorough research into abuses of human rights. Article 14 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states, everyone has the right to seek and enjoy in other countries asylum from persecution. In 2011, around 2.3 million Syrians fled the country when the Syrian regime turned on its own people after peaceful protests. Lebanon offered shelter to 900,000 fleeing Syrians. This caused the country's population to increase by 19%. The UNHCR set up a resettlement scheme for countries to accept a quota of the most vulnerable refugees. In 2014, the UK agreed to provide £600 million of relief to people inside Syria. However, the UK government refused to participate in the resettlement scheme. Initially, not a single Syrian refugee was allowed to enter the UK. Amnesty, along with other organisations, engaged in a campaign of lobbying. 10,000 emails were sent to UK MPs, and 94% of all MPs. The UK agreed to accept 5,000 Syrian refugees. In 2015, the number was increased to 20,000 Syrians to be resettled in the UK within 5 years. That number was achieved in 2020. Now, this event is about telling stories. The Bromsgrove and Redditch and the Malvern groups will be telling us the stories about the Syrian refugees who came to resettle in Worcestershire. The story begins with a video produced for us by Maz Salmo.
Like everybody in my group, Thank you so much for everything.
Footballgate Street, Malvern Link, Great Malvern, Colmore.
Well, Malvern Welcomes is a registered charity. It's been a charity now since 2017, became a charity. It is also what's called a community sponsorship group. So families come here, and Malvern Welcomes is entirely responsible for setting up everything for the resettlement of the family. At the moment we've got 5 families in Malvern. 4 of them are originally from Syria and 1 is from Iraq.
Yes. Did you find them they are friendly or not, or the opposite? Are you satisfied with their behaviors?
All the families are extremely friendly. Yeah, very, very welcoming. We hope we've been welcoming to them, but they are certainly welcoming to us. I mean, the expression that I hear a lot is, if I say, can I come around and see you? You're welcome, you're most welcome anytime.
This is lady very nice. She's nice, isn't she? Yes. She's a new nice people. I need everybody to understand. Stay, no stay. Yes, and leave that it has to be in those days. You call it I said why? والله ناس أوادم وعلى القليلة بحس بأمان هون وكلهم عم بيساعدوني. نتاشا بيتر عم بيساعد أيمن، صار له 5 سنين ياخدوا على الجيم معه تايبتي، ونتاشا عم تعمل أوراقي، وفيكي 5 سنين عم تجيب لي خبز. وبحب هالبلد، ما هن مثل ما هن ناس هالبلد أنا كمان منهم فيهم، لأنه هالبلد شالني وشال جوزي.
We initially started off by supporting with clothes and toiletries for the asylum seekers. Many of them came with absolutely nothing other than flip-flops and the shorts that they were standing up in. And what we found absolutely universally was they were so grateful for any help whatsoever. They are amazing people. The things that they've gone through to get themselves here, I found incredible and inspiring every time I've met them. They're so determined. The children have a brilliant ethic about education. They want to learn, they want to get into school, and we've been able to help many of them to get into school.
أنا بال2019 تقريبا بالشهر الثالث بال2019 طلعت من سوريا من مدينة الحارة، اتجهت باتجاه تركيا، طبعا كله يعني طريق تهريب. وصلت تركيا تقريبا بالشهر الثالث، بمارس بالشهر الثالث. بعدها طلعت من تركيا على اليونان، جلست باليونان 10 أيام، وبعدها طلعنا بالطيران على ألمانيا ميونخ. وصلت ألمانيا وبعدين اتجهت على فرنسا، ومن فرنسا خلال شاحنة دخلت لهون على بريطانيا.
Initially we had quite a few obstacles. Firstly, it was the misinformation that was out there in the community that the hotel was full of men, which for some reason upset people. It gave people a reason to kind of think that they were terrorists or whatever, when in fact there were a lot of families and children in the hotel. So that was the first obstacle. The second one was that the Serco, the agency that were responsible for the hotel, were initially nervous of who we were and what we wanted to do. So it took a while to get the trust of them to allow us to support.
What we soon understood was when the basics of accommodation and financial support had been met, what our Syrian refugee families really needed were friends. So we brought together a group, the Befrienders group, of people who had time and enthusiasm to meet and to become friends of the families. So what do Befrienders do? Well, we do very much what all friends do. We meet, we keep in touch, sometimes through WhatsApp in COVID days. We visit and we listen. And we listen, to begin with, we were listening to stories of real sadness and loss in Syria. But now we listen to stories of hope and successes and needs. And when we identify a need, we act. And it might be a request for a bicycle. It might be some need for financial help with tickets to visit family in Europe. It might be someone to go walking with a refugee to keep fit.
We started our group in 2015 in Bromsgrove. This was firstly to help campaign for Worcestershire County Council to take in Syrian refugees under the government's Syrian Vulnerable Persons Relocation Scheme. This was successful, but the first families came to Redditch in 2016. So we expanded our group to include Redditch, and we became Bromsgrove and Redditch Welcomed Refugees. More families came to Bromsgrove in 2018 and 19. We now support 40 Syrian people, 20 in Redditch and 20 in Bromsgrove. The aim of the group was to help the families to settle into a strange environment, to provide soft furnishings and other essentials that you don't get in rented accommodation normally, and to help them learn English and integrate into the community. We set up conversation cafes in both towns, and we organised social events so that the families could meet each other and meet us and meet the community. We also spoke to all the schools in the area to prepare them to help welcome the Syrian children into the schools.
منظمة BRWR منظمة رائعة جدا، وهي قدمت جميع أنواع الدعم، منها الليجل ايد للمحامي ببرمنغهام، ومنها يعني في دعم مالي، في دعم معنوي، في دعم للدراسة، يعني علمونا نتكلم شوية لغة إنجليزي، ويعني أي شغلة بدي إياها كنت أسأل عنها ويعطوني جميع أنواع الدعم. حصلت على الإقامة بالشهر 11 بال 2020. اجتني الإقامة الحمد لله، وإقامتي 5 سنين.
I'm on the committee. I'm the IT guy. I'm quite keen on keep fitting myself, keep fit, running, and so I take some refugees to the gym, or to circuit training, or to the run group, because to help people, just to, you know, just to, it's be friendly. It's a good thing to do.
British people, they are very kind and they are very good people and helping people for everyone refugee or everyone who is there need help in UK. I thank them so much from my heart.
I can really recommend being a befriender if you really want to welcome the stranger and make them feel at home in this country.
Well, thank you very much. That was an excellent video, and I'm very grateful. We're all very grateful for those refugees, volunteers, and the technical people who agreed to produce the film for this video. So thank you very much. We're now going to our speakers, and our first speaker is Sue Wolfendale. She's going to talk about her work with Malvern Welcomes, the novel sponsorship scheme. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat box, or if you want to have any clarifications, put them in there. Sue will talk through, and then we'll deal with any questions at the end. Sue.
Hi, good evening. Can I be heard? Yeah, great, lovely. Well, I'm really pleased to have the opportunity this evening to talk about the experience of being involved in what is called a community sponsorship group. And I'm on the management team of a group called Malvern Welcomes. Malvern, for those who don't know, is a small town which is about 8 miles to the south of Worcester, with a population of about 40,000, when it could be described in being a semi-rural setting. And we are, as I've already said, a community sponsorship group, currently supporting 2 families who've come to us through community sponsorship, and 3 others who've come to the town through Worcestershire County Council. Just to start with a little history, we began in 2014 as an offspring of the local Amnesty group, and a suggestion from Amnesty International that families could be resettled in more rural areas, not just cities. Malvern Welcomes is a standalone group, although other community sponsorship initiatives may be attached to existing organisations such as churches or mosques. And as with the Bromsgrove and Redditch group, we were initially a campaign group seeking to persuade the county council, that's Worcestershire County Council, to take families under the Syrian Vulnerable Persons Relocation Scheme, bit of a mouthful. But when this eventually happened and the first groups came to Worcestershire, there were 12 families in all, none of them came to Malvern. And we had quite a large group of people by this time, all keen to assist with resettlement of refugees. And so we decided that we would take the plunge and become a full community sponsorship group, a scheme that was established in the UK in 2016 and largely based on an established scheme in Canada, which had been going since the late 1970s. By mid-2020, 400 refugees have been resettled in locations across the UK, supported by around 70 community sponsorship groups. And since then, there have been now more than 120 new community sponsorship groups established. Last year, the government announced that the scheme would change its name and become the Global Resettlement Scheme, widening the geographical area from which refugees could come, and importantly saying that the numbers that were taken under community sponsorship would be additional to the target numbers that they might give, the numbers that might be taken in through local authorities. Returning to Malvern Welcomes, we made the decision to become a charity so that we could be entirely self-sufficient. Otherwise, we would have needed to seek the support of an umbrella organisation to act as a guarantor or lead sponsor. So we became a charity in 2017. To explain, the community sponsorship scheme is run by the Home Office. And we were in fact one of the early groups to go through the application process and were very much part of learning, both certainly from our point of view and also from the Home Office. As a prospective community sponsorship group, we had to satisfy the Home Office that we had sufficient resources to meet the family's needs, both in terms of finance and resettlement support. We had to have a house for the family to rent, and it had to be private rental rather than social housing. We had to have at least £9,000 in the bank for one family. And we had to be able to show that we could provide English language teaching and demonstrate that we could offer a network of support. With an amazing response from our local community and a bringing together of a wealth of expertise and experience, we eventually gained the seal of approval. We welcomed our first family in mid-2018. I can remember that it was very exciting waiting at Birmingham Airport for them to arrive and to make the journey back to Malvern and to introduce them to their new home. Later that year, we welcomed a second family. We had hoped to put in a third application last year, but as you can understand, the pandemic rather got in the way of that. However, we now have just lodged an application to take a third family and await the Home Office decision. Families to qualify to be able to come to the UK under this scheme, families have initially to be registered with the UNHCR, that's the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, and have been living in countries around Syria or Iraq, usually in a camp, but not always. To be eligible for this scheme, there has to be one family member who's been identified as vulnerable for health reasons, disability, single parent families, or people who have experienced torture. Prior to departure to the UK, they have extensive background checks and medicals and are given some information about the country that they're going to. And they very often don't know which country they are going to be going to until quite a short period of time before they set off to go there. And they're given information about the country that they're going to, which is delivered by the IOM, the International Organization for Migration. The receiving group is asked to prepare some brief information about themselves and the place that the family will be going to, which is sent out to the family via the Home Office. There's an element of choice as to where they go, but in practice, very limited. The community sponsorship, in addition of getting approval from the Home Office, has to gain consent from the local authorities, both the district council, if there is one, and the county council. This is because they would be ultimately responsible for the family should the sponsorship arrangement break down for any reason. It's the nominated officer in the county who first receives details of the family and will make a decision as to whether their needs can be met, both in terms of education and health. How are we organised? Being a charity, we have a trustee board who have responsibility to both the charity commission, our donors, and the families to show that responsible governance, basically that we're run and operating legally and effectively. The management team make the decisions as to the day-to-day running of Malvern Welcomes and have an overview of how the families are settling in. We have what we call a family support group made up of volunteers who have day-to-day contact with families. Monthly family support group meetings provide a useful forum for discussion of issues and a good opportunity to give mutual support. We have lead volunteers to cover education, health, English teaching, and safeguarding. And each family has a small team of volunteers linked to them with a nominated lead, who is the initial point of contact should there be any problems. And the ESOL, English language team, are involved from a very early stage. And we're lucky to have an experienced coordinator who works with the team to deliver individual learning plans. We've come to realise that confidence in English is the key to both achieving integration into the wider community and to finding employment. Adult family members can also access informal English teaching in Malvern, and the Further Education College in nearby Worcester provides English teaching starting at entry level 1. When a family first arrive, the involvement is very intense. We familiarise them with the local area, buses and shops, etc. Register with a GP, apply for benefits, set up a bank account, find school places, and give a gradual introduction to the volunteer group. In the first year, staff from the Home Office come for 3 monthly monitoring visits, and they hold discussions with members of the group and also with the family. Until March of last year, we shared with many social events with families, appreciating the sharing of food and enjoying each other's company. An allotment has proved very successful, with families being able to grow fresh produce. There's been a sewing group and Pilates class. Volunteering opportunities have been sought that give valuable social and language experience. We benefit immensely also from our involvement with the umbrella group Worcestershire Welcomes Refugees that Bromsgrove and Redditch are also involved with. And we have regular bi-monthly meetings with them. Each area that has refugees in Worcestershire has a welcome group, and we enjoy being able to link together, and we have in the past had joint social events as well. So what have we learned and what have been the challenges? Certainly learned the importance of building an initial resource base, gathering a group of committed individuals and beginning individual team building. We started off with workshops with an organisation called City of Sanctuary, Citizens UK, And also we had very close links with Professor Jenny Phillimore from Birmingham University, who is, with her team, has been doing a lot of work on refugee resettlement. And they've just brought out a very interesting report, actually, about community sponsorship. I think if you Google community sponsorship Birmingham University, you'd probably, well, you would be able to get access to their report. These sessions gave us the opportunity both to reflect and to develop a knowledge base and to get to know each other. We realised the importance of establishing relationships with local resources, schools, the job centre, GPs, the bank, and developing a local network. We work with family members to achieve independence from us. We've learnt from experience and from what we know of research that this will take time and will be a very individual matter. There are so many factors that come into play. Maybe there are times when we've been overprotective, which has risked loss of confidence or creating a dependency. Getting the balance between doing something for someone and, on the other hand, offering no assistance, which leads to difficulties, is not easy. How long we'll continue to support individual families is a matter of regular debate. The Home Office ceased their involvement after 1 year. Our involvement continues well beyond that, seeing the nature of the support changing. Community sponsorship requires a great deal of organisation and planning. For all of us, it has been a huge learning process, and we often wonder how something might seem so straightforward as offering a home to a refugee family can be so complex and time-consuming. However, it's been very rewarding, and getting to know the families has been an amazing and worthwhile experience. Without wishing to sound patronising, we so admire their resilience and enthusiasm to learn English and be part of UK life in the face of such disruption and sadness in their lives. I think it's fair to say that we have all been greatly enriched by our involvement. Just to add, if you are interested in forming a community sponsorship group, I certainly would like to direct you to a charity fairly recently set up called Reset, which is sort of at arm's length from the Home Office. And their function is to support community sponsorship groups. And they are really excellent, and they provide information and training, which is invaluable. So it would be lovely to think that there are going to be many, many more community sponsorship groups set up over the country, welcoming more refugee families. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sue. It's gratifying to know that it's not just inner city or relatively modest accommodation who take all the people who are sent out to different parts of the country. Thank you very much indeed. I don't think I've seen any questions to Sue, so if you have any, please put them in which you can answer them later. Just have a quick look. No questions for the time being, Sue. We next have contributions from, I'm not quite sure, they'll choose the order they do them in. Yvonne Rendell, chair of BRWR, Janet King, who's also in BRWR, and Linda Fleming.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ian, and welcome to everybody. I'm glad to see you all here. I hope you like the video, because I feel that one of the most striking things about the video you've just seen is the contrast between the war scenes in Syria and the peace and beauty of Morven. I know that our refugee families were so pleased to come to Worcestershire but the contrast in cultures as well as scenery and weather is vast. We set up our group to welcome the families, help them understand the British way of life, and integrate into the community. Redditch was the first town in Worcestershire to welcome Syrian refugees, and as a fledgling group, BRWR had a lot to learn about what was required and how we could best help. Those who came on the government scheme were only able to bring a 20-kilogram case with them. That's the amount we take on holiday, not to start a new life. So our first task was to make rented accommodation comfortable by providing soft furnishings and also televisions so that they could watch Arabic and English programs. The second was to help provide additional clothing, particularly for the colder weather. And one of the most difficult problems for refugees is the language, not just spoken language, but a total change of written script. Now, most of us will have learned French or German at some time. Some may have attempted Greek, which is a different alphabet, but I feel sure that we would hate to be thrown into a country where we didn't understand the writing, never mind the language. That is why learning English is the most important thing to do, and where we started our conversation cafes to complement the formal ESOL teaching offered by the colleges. We are now reviewing that and focusing more on individual teaching as people progress at different rates in their learning. And transport was another problem, and we set up a lift givers to take people to hospital and other appointments, because hospital appointments could be in any town in the county. We have since discovered that the NHS does provide a patient transport service for disadvantaged people, but it is still difficult to access this sometimes. Support was also required to help children attend school and provide additional tuition to help them catch up in certain areas. And we followed this with social events of different types, introducing typically British things such as skittles, barn dancing, concerts, and quizzes, as well as lunch hubs and picnics for informal socialising. The people really did seem to enjoy those things, even the barn dancing. The pandemic has stopped those sort of things for the time being, but we will start them again as soon as we can. We have also tried to support our families to gain employment or further training where possible, and help them understand the intricacies of universal credit and online payment of utility and council tax bills. I will now hand over to Janet to speak further about friendship and other issues which are now beginning to arise. She will also discuss the difference between the way Syrian refugees are treated on the government scheme and the much poorer way that asylum seekers are treated.
Janet, can't hear you.
You need to unmute Janet.
Can't hear us.
There's always somebody who does that, isn't there? It even happens on TV, I know. I'll start again. Welcome and lovely to see you all here. I spoke in the video earlier about the refugees' need for friends. And we have been really fortunate at BRWR to find a group of really caring and sensitive and sensible befrienders. And we visit and we're in close contact with our families. Each refugee household has what we call a key friend and a team with different skills and different interests, which we try and match with the interests of the family. An example, my family has a father who is a very keen football supporter. In fact, his first words of English were Manchester United, followed by Liverpool. And so we started going to watch the local Bromsgrove sporting home games. And I really think that they help to lift his spirits as much as the weekly therapy session, which he has with Freedom from Torture. He was tortured in prison over an 18-month spell in Syria. It reminded him of his life in Syria, where he led the football club's supporter group. And bringing back skills such as dressmaking and baking has been an important part of our support. A mother from Damascus who was grieving for her son, who'd been gunned down on the campus of his university, was eager to join a craft group organised for us in Redditch. And it soon became apparent that she was no ordinary amateur dressmaker, but she'd been trained as a pattern cutter in Syria. So she was provided with a new sewing machine as all the participants in that group were, and we saw her confidence just return. Preparing food together became an important part of our activities, and a shared lunch hub became very popular before COVID. We shall be starting again soon. With everyone preparing the food they like, we were introduced to tabbouleh and fattoush, and we were soon adding rose water to our desserts. And the food that we provided, well, carrot cake, scones, and Cornish pasties. How about that? I don't know whether they compare with fattoush. Working together is one of the best ways really to learn to understand and trust each other, isn't it? And when a member of our BRWR committee suggested that there was work to do in a Redditch community garden, which he was developing, there was no shortage of volunteers, Syrian volunteers. And this was followed by another project, apple juice making, which has turned out to be actually our best source of income. Refuge Juice was truly a joint enterprise with volunteers and Syrian men, always men, gleaning apples by invitation of the growers, and they would have been wasted otherwise. Pressing and pasteurising them and bottling them at a local horticultural college down in Pershore. A Syrian schoolgirl designed the label, and our marketing team set to work selling the pure apple juice to our supporters, which included churches, shops, and restaurants. And the profits made are used to provide items needed by the refugees and to pay for outings like the annual coach trip and visits to children's farms and zoos. But there is a more serious side to our work. Unfortunately, things don't always go well. And there have been, as Yvonne said, plenty of trips to hospitals to all parts of the county. Keeping people fit and healthy has been quite a challenge. Remembering that the resettlement scheme is called the Syrian Vulnerable Persons Relocation Scheme, and they were chosen because they were considered to be too vulnerable to cope with life in a refugee camp or similar place in the Middle East. So there are some very serious health needs amongst the group. And this is where Pete, who is here with us tonight, has been really successful. And maybe he'll talk a little more about, he's used his passion for keeping fit and for going to the gym to help refugees. And actually he spoke on the video, didn't he? And he organises people, volunteers, to walk with them, to walk, and then gradually as their English increases, to talk. So walking and talking is another really good way of helping. Preparation for employment, training and help to find a job is actually the responsibility of a staff member of Worcestershire County Council. And we are very lucky indeed to have such a wonderful lady. She's been very helpful, Natasha, and is much appreciated. And our families do owe her a lot. And it's certainly not every county council that actually employs someone in her role. However, after nearly 5 years, actually very few of our refugees are actually in paid work. Our most successful is Maz, our videographer, who produced the opening video, and he's carving out for a new career for himself here. And he has his own business. Syrian food delivered to events and sold in the local market in Redditch is another enterprise. None of the women is in work due to either age or family responsibilities at the moment, but they're all learning English and making good strides forward. 2 young people are studying for degrees in pharmacy and another in computer science at local universities. These having been here for nearly 5 years. And they arrived with just school English. And we're all very proud of them. And a few of the men have passed their driving tests, and 3 now have their own cars, thus opening up more opportunities for employment. But I want to move on, and I will be brief, but I want to move on to the difference between the support given in this country to our resettled refugees and the asylum seekers who are coming. It's vast, a huge difference. It's a stark difference. And we are trying very hard to try and narrow that gap of support. We've started working with asylum seekers as opposed to our resettled refugees. When Bromsgrove, Britannia Hotel, began to be used for asylum seekers, up to 148 asylum seekers, and on the video, Joanna Dyer, who led her group marvelously, in offering them support. As she said, coming without clothes even. And so we started a bazaar. It was a Saturday bazaar held at a local church. During COVID, we had to start out in the car park to begin with, and the number of times we and the clothes got drenched was just awful. And so eventually we managed to find a small church hall, and we were inside then. And some of the refugees, actually, the only clothes that they have came from our bazaar. We put out a call for clothes. We bought some, but largely they were really good second-hand clothes, washed and sorted. And we managed to store them in a local Boy Scouts hut, actually, which wasn't being used. So we had a whole really hard-working group working with us on that. We found ESOL teachers, and because we were able to supply some laptops, second-hand again, usually, and smartphones. Our asylum seekers were able to take Zoom, via Zoom, were able to take ESOL classes, and we were amazed at the number of qualified and some practicing ESOL teachers who came when we called for them. And they are still in touch and still teaching ESOL via Zoom with the asylum seekers who've now been dispersed into the Birmingham area, Black Country, and some as far as Bolton and Norwich. And that's been a brilliant link for them as they leave the comfort of a 4-star hotel and go out into a single room in a shared house, sharing kitchen and bathroom, and families just with flats of varying quality, some excellent, newly refurbished, and some, well, 2 of our asylum seekers had to start by redecorating, and in one case getting rid of the mice before they felt happily to settle in their new home. That shouldn't have happened, by the way, and we have complained about it. So that was some of our work with the asylum seekers. But asylum seekers, if you're a Syrian asylum seeker, you may very well not be eligible for a resettlement scheme. You may simply be not vulnerable enough. You may be a young man who has been conscripted for national service and is therefore on a list of people who will be conscripted into the Syrian army. You may not want to join the Syrian army to kill other Syrians. Civil wars are tragic events, aren't they? And so what do? Well, there's only one thing you can do if you want to escape Syria. You come and seek asylum in another country. And you can't do it legally if there aren't enough places on resettlement schemes that will accept you, and you can't do it legally if you can't get a humanitarian visa. And there is a huge shortage, and we are campaigning for humanitarian visas for people in countries of conflict and other countries, and for people who, so they would have to come and use an agent. And it's interesting that they use an agent. The government refers to them as smugglers, people smugglers and traffickers. And yes, they're not great people, are they? They're making a large profit, many of them, out of human misery. But would you see it if you were a Syrian or any other asylum seeker? Would you see it as a service that's being provided? Okay, it's an exorbitant price, and some people have to sell their houses even, and their cars certainly, to find the money to pay for them. But would you see it as a service that no government will offer you? You perhaps would, and that really is worth considering. We have a situation at the moment where asylum seekers who've come irregularly and actually the majority do not come across the channel. They don't even come in lorries. The majority of asylum seekers actually fly in, and then they seek asylum. The people that get the publicity are the people in the little boats crossing the channel, aren't they? And the Royal Navy is being used, or is considered being used against those. However, so they arrive here and they claim asylum. I've noticed a difference recently, and I've worked with asylum seekers for a while. I've noticed a difference recently. Recently, an asylum seeker who arrived here in Redditch, actually, was detained very briefly, but it was detained at Yarlswood, which is an IRC, an immigration removal centre. That hasn't been happening so much. Detained and then granted bail, and then sent up to a hotel up in Lancashire, as it happens, but that's by the by. But on his bail notice, it says that he is liable for re-detention. Okay, welcome to this country. You know, we are a country, I'm not sure how much you know about this, but we are a country, as many others do, who have immigration detention as part of the immigration system. It's a threat that hangs over virtually every asylum seeker's head. They are called immigration removal centres, the detention centres. Why are they immigration removal centres? Well, when they were opened in the 1970s, they began simply as that. About 72 hours, maybe a few days, stay in the immigration removal centre, because your claim had been refused, your appeal had been refused, you couldn't make a fresh claim, or that had been refused, and there was no other way. You knew you had to leave. You didn't leave voluntarily, as quite a number do, with £1,000 from the government and a free flight home. And those who refuse that, in my opinion, are the people who really have a genuine need not to be in their home country, who really are afraid of persecution, of death in their own country. Why would they not take the money and go home? So they are the ones that are removed forcibly or deported if they're foreign offenders. Some people, and including newspapers, use those terms interchangeably. Removal is for an asylum seeker whose claim has been refused. Deportation is for a foreign offender. Ex-offender, I will say, people who have spent their conviction, have been in prison for a year or more, and sometimes for immigration offences. And they are almost automatically then deported. Some will appeal, and some, of course, are not able to, the government can't deport them because their home countries won't accept them. So there are really quite interesting and very big issues here. We are campaigning for the end of indefinite detention. We are the only country in Europe that has absolutely indefinite detention, which means there is no time limit. As in criminal in a prison sentence, there is an end date. For immigration removal, it is indefinite and there is no end date. And this causes huge mental health problems for people in immigration removal centres. It is, in fact, I mean, the vast majority of people do leave within 28 days, to be honest, but there are always some, and the record was 9 years, which was absolutely ridiculous. And I think nobody could quite explain why that was. That is not the case usually, but a couple of years does happen. And this is after a criminal sentence has been I mean, time in prison has been spent. So if I could just leave you with just two things, if you would do for all of us, and especially for asylum seekers. The first is to support the Lift the Ban campaign as #LiftTheBan. And this is the campaign for the right to work, for the right for asylum seekers to take paid work so that they're not dependent on the government and therefore seen by some members of the public as a drain on society. And the second is to support the long-standing campaign to end indefinite detention. The Detention Forum is a coalition of NGOs and other organisations. It's been campaigning for many years to end indefinite detention, and it's certainly time. There were our local MP, Sajid Javid, actually was, you may know, remember, was Home Secretary, and actually during his tenure, we didn't always agree with him, but during his tenure, trials were begun for a group of women to keep them out of detention and to determine their claims in the community. We're still waiting for the result of those trials, but with no response, we're now finding that a new detention centre is being prepared to open in September. Hassockfield, some of you may have read about the Say No to Hassockfield campaign. This is up in County Durham, a long way from most of the centres where asylum seekers would be accommodated, and quite a long way from most of their lawyers. So that campaign, Say No to Hassockfield, we would love some support with. I've spoken for far too long, and I'd be happy to answer questions if there are any on what I've said, but thank you for listening. Linda, over to you.
Oh goodness, hold on, unmute.
You haven't.
You actually
hear me? Yeah, can you hear me now? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm like Janet. I'm on the committee, BRWR, and I'm a key friend. And as Janet's saying, we're supporting refugees, we're supporting asylum seekers. And in terms of being a befriender, Key Friends Befriending, if you look on the brwr.uk website, you'll find guidance there on being a befriender. It's part of the training programme, and there's also the policies and procedures that we all work to, that we've worked up for BRWR. It's quite useful to have a look, and Pete maintains it as our IT guy, yes? Anyway, I'm here just very quickly to tell you about family reunion, because something that we've been learning a lot about really from the people that we support is, you know, they're getting much more in the driving seat. They're the ones who are sort of very often linking with the people that they think can best help them, yeah, as they know us and get to know us best. And something that really, really concerns them is help to get family members left behind in dangerous situations in Syria into the UK via a safe and legal route. As Key Friends, as befrienders, we're very aware of their very regular contact with family overseas, those left behind, very often via free WhatsApp video calls when the person overseas can get internet connection. And under family reunion, basically the person known as the applicant overseas is wanting to be reunited with a family member known as the sponsor over here, and who has been granted refugee status or humanitarian protection in the UK. So the families here who are resettled are now under refugee status. They have leave to remain. They're applying for indefinite leave to remain, some of them now after 5 years. So there's two legal routes for family reunion. There's the resettlement scheme that you've been hearing about. And as we know, these places are very limited, and UNHCR in the field, they fully explore all local solutions first. So only 1% of applicants ever make it to the UK. And then this family reunion, which can be inside and outside the Home Office rules. And both schemes, family reunion and resettlement, involve two separate processes. So family reunion, what has to be done? Applications are made in writing to the Home Office, which if successful are linked with the family who are registered with UNHCR overseas. UNHCR in the UK aren't involved in this process. UNHCR register refugees, they pick up the vulnerabilities and they prioritise the people with most issues in the country of asylum. Okay, so, but the difficulty there for a lot of people is if they're in Syria, they need to go, say, to Lebanon to get to a UNHCR base to register. They have to be locatable. It can take years waiting for a decision. They may stay in the area at great risk very often. So family reunion, who can apply under this route? It's designed for immediate family members. It's designed for spouses or children under the age of 18. For extended family, like dependent relatives, or if the family member is in the UK as is a British citizen, there are additional support requirements. So there's applications which are made inside the immigration rules. This is for minor children, children under the age of 18, not leading an independent life, was part of the family unit of the person who's been granted refugee status or humanitarian protection in the UK, the sponsor. Defined as the spouse, the husband or wife civil partnership, and to note the marriage did not take place after the sponsor was granted refugee status. The partner of the sponsor, they'd been living together for 2 years before the couple separated for the sponsor to come to the UK, and the person formed part of the family unit before the sponsor left their home country. What do you need to prove? The sponsor has to prove their determination letter from the Home Office to say they've got leave to remain, indefinite leave to remain, and their biometric residence permit. The relationship, there have to be original marriage certificates, birth certificates, DNA tests, sponsors' interview records, evidence of phone calls, messages, photographs, all that sort of thing. All this has to predate the sponsor's departure from their home country. There has to be a genuine and subsisting relationship for a partner and for the child not leading an independent life. Very, very narrow. If the marriage certificate is lost, every effort has to be made to trace it. And as we know, certificates, passports, they get stolen en route here. It's very difficult for people to provide original certificates. And any misrepresentation of facts or evidence of deception by the sponsor in the UK, the refugee here, will lead to a review of their entitlement to refugee status, and which can be revoked or ended. It can be risky for them. Then there's applications outside the immigration rules. Shall I be very quick? The decision maker can grant leave to enter outside the immigration rules for someone who's neither a spouse, civil partner or minor child, like parents or siblings, but where a refusal under the rules would result in unjustifiably harsh consequences. And they're looking at the Human Rights Act, Article 3, freedom from torture, or their right to family life under Article 8, Human Rights Act, will be breached by refusal. So it's very tight. You can hear more, I've got examples, but I'll leave that because really I need to tie this up, I think. The UK sponsoring relative must pay an application fee and show they have finances to maintain and accommodate these additional family members. There are costs. Family reunion applications within the immigration rules are free of charge, but outside the rules, it's a Home Office fee of £388 per applicant. And then all the add-ons, the flights, the DNA tests to prove biological relationships, visa application fees, TB tests, all those sorts of things. And all I just want to finish with saying is the whole process is very complicated. It's very difficult to negotiate for anybody. And basically, you know, resettlement options and family reunion, it's all been new learning for many of us. We've been trying to find out, families have been asking us, we've been trying to find out to the best of our ability. and they research as well. And this is written really from my experience and understanding. And to advise and follow up on this, we need, on an individual basis, we need a really good immigration lawyer. Okay, I hope that's helpful. Awful lot of information. Thank you. Okay, switch off.
Well, thank you very much. To everybody who's taken part there, we've had some very interesting contributions. I did promise, I think, in the message that I sent on the Eventbrite that we'd try and round it up in an hour. That hour's gone. But I think for those people who want to have more information, you could perhaps stay with us for a while and see if there's any other questions you would like to have answered. Several of questions or matters have arisen and been answered on the chat. Is there anything else that we want to talk about from there?
There's one thing that I said. It says on here. It says, "Can we have a title and a link to Jenny's publication, please, for everyone?" Yeah. So
I was trying. Can I? I was trying to put it. I've been fiddling with the chat, and I can't. I've written something. I can't post it.
Do it.
Can somebody tell me what I have to do to post it?
If you just type your message on where it says to everyone, and you type your message,
yeah,
it'll come up.
Yes.
Then you press enter. So
I can't see an enter.
Well,
your return key.
Oh, on your keyboard. Return key.
Okay. And then we had another question about.
Can I just say then that for those who are interested, because I've pressed the return key and
Oh, it's come up. No, it hasn't.
Oh, she's muted.
No, it hasn't come up.
Sorry, communities. It's entitled "Community Sponsorship in the UK: Refugees to Citizens," and it's published by the University of Birmingham Institute for Research into Super Diversity, and it was published in. It's dated June 2020.
Okay.
So I'm sorry that I haven't managed to get it onto the chat.
And I think there's another question as well here, which has been partially answered, which is there a turnover of volunteers as people's circumstances change? And how do you support to the families? Well, yes, there is a turnover of volunteers. I mean, we're very lucky, I think, that most of our volunteers have stayed with us, actually, but some people have had to leave, some people have got tired and have left. But we do get new people coming along all the time. And we've got a couple on tonight who are new, Ria and Gina are both new. And then we actually support the families. Each family has its own key friend, and then other friends around the key friend. So if the key friend has to leave, then we can replace that key friend, or vice versa, as it were. So that's how we do that. And then it says, how does a volunteer on your scheme learn how to be a befriender? And then that's answered, I think. We have a training. We have training for befrienders. We've had several courses on training, and we also run a regular support group for our befrienders on Zoom. And is there anything else that hasn't been answered? I think that's it as far as I can see.
I think something else. Can you hear me? Yeah. In terms of the way we are organised with key friends and befrienders, as people themselves become more confident and they know us better, it's sort of what I said before, they become much more in the driving seat themselves. We're enabling and empowering them all along. And as and when they have issues, they may go to somebody else because they know that that person within the group can help them best. Yes, they'll keep the key friend updated, but they will actually link with somebody else who's got more expertise in that area, which is great because that's them taking control of their lives, which is what we're all about, really. And that's what's been happening, which is great.
Ian, could I put in a word?
Please. Probably going to say what I was going to say, but please go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think this links up so well with some of the other contributions we have this week. It's very impressive and wonderful to hear what's going on in Worcestershire, really, really great. But there is a big worry at the moment, as you probably know, that the government's proposals for immigration reform, as they call it, it's really all about the asylum system, it's not so much about immigration generally, is that the whole system will be on the model of the resettlement programs that are going on at the moment. Now, the question obviously arises, how broadly can this be spread across the country? And it is, I think, fairly clear that this is a way in a rather backdoor way of limiting the number of asylum seekers, fairly clear. Now, I would like to ask, well, before I say that, if anybody wants to know more about the government's proposals, go to websites for either Asylum Matters or Birmingham City of Sanctuary or City of Sanctuary nationally. You will find a lot more information there, and I'm not going to go into it now. So please do follow that up. The consultation paper has now been closed. There will be a bill in due course about reform of the asylum system. What I would like to ask the people who've spoken tonight is how long do you think you need to provide this support for any one or group of refugees? And if it is all asylum is going to be through resettlement systems, how widely can you see this being available to more than the current numbers of the 5,000 a year that we've had over the last 5 years? Could I ask that question?
Janet?
Could I come in on that, on the numbers? My own group, which is actually Liberal Democrats for Seekers of Sanctuary, sorry to be party political, but our policy is that we have requested 10,000 a year in resettlement schemes on at least. That would be the minimum. That would take some, well, I would like to say that would work neatly and take some people out of the asylum route and put them into the resettlement route. I'm not sure that it would work quite as easily as that. The people who come as asylum seekers are very often, they're just wouldn't be eligible because they're not vulnerable enough unless they change eligibility criteria. And yet they're not able mostly, well, they wouldn't be coming as asylum seekers if they were able to come on a work visa. And we know how difficult it is now for work employment visas, even within the EU, now that we're out of the EU, trying to get an employer over there. A friend of mine has just not been even given an interview recently in the Netherlands because the employer was not prepared to apply for a work visa for someone from a third country. So there are not that many coming. We're grateful for those people who can come as medics or academics, etc. But there are not that many coming on that route. So how are we going to, how are we going to help us people to come? Our suggestion is more humanitarian visas. Also, that they should be able to come be able to apply for asylum en route. It presumably would have to be in an embassy because that would not be seen as a third party territory. And, you know, woe betide you if you're an asylum seeker and you apply in France and then want to come to the UK because you will be told that you can't because you've already applied or you've been fingerprinted in a third country. And that is what Priti Patel is talking about, actually sending people, more and more people back when they've actually reached here because they've already passed through a third country. And she's not talking about actually having made an asylum application in that country or even being fingerprinted, I noticed, in the new plan. Just people who have passed through. That's virtually everybody who hasn't flown over, isn't it? So that is going to be a real problem. And I think we are going to see probably a reverse of the detention centre, the immigration removal centres. They have been closing over the past few years. and now another one is being built. So that we are really concerned about that. Does that answer the question, or was there something something more?
I thought you were asking how likely it is that we could support more people coming in that way on the resettlement scheme. Is that correct? And then how that could be expanded around the countryside. Was that your question?
Well, I think yes. Obviously, what you've been able to do is fantastic. But how far can you extend that into future years with equal numbers that you've already been supporting?
Can I just say that it's not just us that will be supporting new arrivals. It's, you know, the refugees that we have been supporting who have been integrating more and more into society here, who've been, you know, their English has improved. Maybe they've been working or working temporarily. Maybe they're driving a car. They're keen to help new arrivals if they're able to. If they do not have caring responsibilities or it's sporadic, in between all that, they're keen to help other people. And so it's not just, they're volunteers with us. Yeah, so we grow that way as well.
Yeah, I understand that. Yes, thank you.
I think honestly, with the government assistance, we could go on indefinitely, couldn't we? As our people become less dependent, that's not true of all, but there are certainly some families who are now depend on us, really don't depend on us. Visits by key friends are really just really social events, aren't they? Because they're sorted, because they've got friends of their own here, because they are either the children are at university, mum's in work. Yeah, oh yes, that isn't a mum who's in work, and they don't need us so much. So, you know, we're open at the moment and really would welcome more people to come to Bromsgrove and Redditch. It's just a question, is the funding going to be there from the government for those first 5 years?
Yes.
It decreases, you know, it's that first couple of years really when government funding.
It's also housing as well. It's finding correct housing basically, particularly in Bromsgrove, because of the price of the and in Morven as well, because the price of the houses and the rent. That's a bit of a problem as well.
The government would prefer community sponsorship, as Sue was describing, and that's a really wonderful way of bringing them here. But 9,000 for each family in the bank, you know, is a lot. It's a big ask, it's isn't it?
No, I think you're wonderful. Anyway, thank you very much.
If you don't mind, we will sort of start to round up now. So thank you very much, everybody who's contributed. Thank you for the support from Rosemary, who provided her Zoom, Pete for his technical support, and for all of those people who came in with their very uplifting stories that volunteers are prepared to go to such lengths to help other people. And in a situation where governments and the Home Office are quite happy sometimes to look away from a situation, there are people, when there are people who've been persecuted by their own government, at least there are people who are prepared to offer a warm welcome. I will probably put a supplement onto the end of this about Amnesty's campaigning, because otherwise it'll take us into so much greater length. But thank you very much indeed. Thank you and this brings to the end our week of campaigning or drawing attention to human rights issues. And we have on Saturday, if you're interested, a day of a festival of social justice from midday until 10 o'clock in the evening. It's on the same Eventbrite website where you can register. But I understand that places are being snapped up. So if you are interested, I should get in there quickly. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ian.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.